Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to this special horoscope looking at reimagining policing, especially in the context of the upcoming Chiron and Jupiter transit in Aries set to take place March 12th, 2023. I am your astrologer, Nadia Shah. Thank you for being here. This is a topic that I have been speaking about with you for a few years, and I will link to some of those videos below. They include the Chiron in Aries special horoscope, perhaps the one where I dived in most deeply to an understanding of how we are moving towards seeing our soldiers, our warriors, and that includes law enforcement, differently in some way. That started in 2018, and that trend of Chiron moving through Aries is going to stay with us right to 2027. We will keep feeling that energy. It is being expanded on. This need for awareness, this need for acknowledgement is becoming that much more at the forefront because Jupiter is currently in Aries as well. And I recorded a video on that last year. And of course, 2023, year ahead, I spoke about this energy because it truly is so important as part of understanding what it is that we're actually going through right now, especially symbolically speaking. It can feel as if we are on this treadmill, seeing images that on the one hand are shocking, but then it seems as if they get more detailed, more vivid, and the sadness that people feel, it just continues and has been there for so many years now. Well, there gets a point where, collectively speaking, we understand that we've got to deal with this. And if we don't deal with it, it's only going to become a thing that is more in our face, more obvious, and that much more has an urgency around it, a growing urgency around it to be addressed and actually healed in some way. And I believe that's part of exactly what we're seeing right now. Chiron is the wounded healer, mythologically speaking. And as Chiron moves through the sign of Aries, and Aries has to do with our understanding of the immediate application and implementation of power, especially physical power. Now, the way that we most see that is, of course, with police officers and soldiers, but also in athletes as well. Although for this video, I'll focus more on how the energy of Aries and everything happening there is ultimately awakening this understanding of those very wounds that need to be healed. There are a couple of things also to keep in mind with Chiron. Chiron was discovered or documented way back in 1977, November 1st, 1977. And I will put that chart up so you can have a look, and we'll be referring to this chart and others as well. But it was at this time, that was an actual recent history, that Chiron was in the very early degrees of the sign of Taurus, the sign immediately after Aries. There is a system of thought or a belief among some astrologers that when it is that we're looking at a chart before a particular planet or asteroid was discovered, was documented, was implemented as part of the astrological practice, you can't give it as much importance as the stuff that we already knew about. And that is because in many ways, it is what we know about the sky that reflects, that is a mirror to what it is we understand about ourselves, what it is that we understand about human consciousness as well. And so as we know ourselves more expansively, come to understand our ability to shape our lives, to direct our thoughts, to exercise our free will, so too is that reflected in the discoveries that we make in the world and with these different planets and asteroids that begin to reveal themselves in congruency with how it is that we become revealed to ourselves as well. It all kind of works together. And it is Chiron, very soon after its discovery, that began to be associated with holistic practices, holistic healing, alternative healing modalities as well. And so I'll give you an example of how people tend to use Chiron in a chart. If you're looking at what's happening with Chiron right now, of course, you know, if it is that you like to look at charts on your own and you're a student of astrology, then you know about transits, which is basically looking at a seed moment of a person or an institution or an event, for example. And then you're going to look at where the planets are now, or where it is that they're going, where it is that they were. As part of, and here I'm going to use a word that some astrologers don't like, but I'm just going to say it because it's part of our tradition, as part of prediction, right? That's the word there. As part of understanding which way the energies are going and what it is likely that we are going to be encouraged to understand about ourselves, about each other, as part of co-creating the world that we have here. We co-create along with the universe. We are continually mirroring each other. There's us as humanity, as a collective, and there's the sky, and we're constantly feeding each other back and forth. And so it was Chiron that very quickly, symbolically and astrologically speaking, began to be associated with alternative healing because of what was happening culturally in the world at that time, with a more wide proliferation of these types of practices like acupuncture, like psychosomatic healing, like looking at what's happening psychologically to heal physically, like different types of massage therapies to heal emotional issues, for example. And so this is what we saw taking place, addressing the whole human being as part of healing, which became a more dominant part of culture. And it's what's happening in the world at that time that we begin to associate with whatever's discovered at the time as well. And when it was that Chiron was discovered in 1977, he was at the beginning of the sign of Taurus. And so now here we are, we are in Chiron in Aries, and Aries is an energy of, as I explained, these particular types of people, but it's also an energy of will, of focus, of determination, of adrenaline as well. And the thing is, because Chiron was discovered so recently, even though we can say that Chiron was always there and we can tap into that energy and look at charts from hundreds of years ago and look at what Chiron was doing, it truly is from 1977 on that we as humanity began to incorporate this energy more deeply. And so I'm going to invite you to consider, as I mentioned, if you're a student of astrology, you want to look at what's happening in the chart if there is a need for physical healing that is arising. Of course, you want to look at what's happening in the first house. You want to look at what's happening in the sixth house, maybe the eighth house as well. I know I'm getting a little tech talk here, but it'll only be a second. If you see Saturn, right, it suggests needing to go to an expert, needing to go to somebody within the established field, somebody who is working within the institutions. If you see Neptune, it speaks to allergies. It speaks to like a nebulous energy that may be able to be acknowledged with faith, but ultimately just needs time to pass. But if you see Chiron, it suggests a need for alternative therapies, but also a more holistic understanding of how to address what might be happening in a person where it comes to their health. If you look at a chart and you are trying to deal with something, and Saturn is being indicated here, but you're trying to deal with it in a Neptunian way or a Chiron way, well, healing becomes that much more challenging and difficult and elusive. But if you go right to what the symbol is telling you, well, we're able to understand that much more better how to empower ourselves, navigating forward from there. And so wherever Chiron goes, yes, the need is to look at where a more holistic approach needs to happen. Jupiter is a different energy, though, and Jupiter is one of the traditional planets. This is an energy that is visible in the sky, going all the way back to the ancients, going all the way back to the very first documentations of what was happening in the sky and how human beings were correlating that to events on Earth, well, this goes back to cave drawings that are tens of thousands of years old. So this understanding of our connection to the sky is such a key part of humanity and human evolution. But Jupiter is one of those energies that we have always been aware of, even if our own understanding of ourselves has changed and a richness of the symbolism occurs as a result. Still, Jupiter is one of those energies that we can say in astrology has always been there. Well, wherever Jupiter goes, either the energy is going to expand or it is going to bring healing. So it is either going to bring growth in a way that becomes undeniable, or it is going to represent being able to address things and bring a meaningful sense of hope into the picture. We have had Chiron in Aries for a few years now. But in a sense, since the discovery of Chiron, with Chiron being discovered in the sign after Aries, this is the first time that we are actually having to explore and experience, consciously speaking, what Chiron in Aries is actually like. We as humanity have not lived through the conscious understanding of Chiron in Aries before, ever in humanity. And to me, that represents really the first time that we are being encouraged to bring a truly holistic understanding to what is happening with our warriors, what happens with power, and the ways in which power can be implemented that are holistic, and the ways in which they are not, that facilitate but also exacerbate, that create even more wounds, and where it is that the ways in which power can be asserted that ultimately brings great healing as well. And so there's that big energy that we're now living through for the first time in humanity. But it is going to be, once we navigate forward in 2027, 50 years, a Chiron cycle. Chiron goes all the way around the zodiac every 50 years. It is going to be 2027 that we will have Chiron returning to where it was when it was first discovered. And that really is coming full circle, understanding this symbolism with greater richness, with greater power. And what it is that we're understanding right now will help future generations to understand this energy and incorporate its learning, its gifts, its insights, that much more going forward from here. So I do think it's a good idea for us to remember that we are living through this collectively for the first time. Jupiter in Aries is moving steadily towards that Chiron. Jupiter will conjunct Chiron on March 12, 2023. I'll put that chart up as well. And as we have this slow move of Jupiter towards Chiron, we are seeing this sense right now of a need for healing growing because the awareness of the wounds are growing as well. The wounds of how power can be exercised in a way that creates more wounds, but also how in the process of creating wounds, the person who is doing the wounding is wounded as well. Where is it that we are going to acknowledge both? Well, right now, we may not necessarily be in the space of being able to acknowledge both, but it's almost like on a collective level, we have to. That is what is happening right now. Now, there are some interesting things to consider as part of this energy. Yes, we're moving towards the awareness and growth of either more moments that bring more wounding, that speak to how wounding is taking place. But at the same time, what's so fascinating that we have happening with this energy is that as we march forward later on this year, I'll put that chart up as well, we're going to have the North Node come to the point in the sky that Chiron was in when Chiron was discovered. Now, this is very important for a few reasons. One is, and the most important is, that the North Node represents karmic healing, karmic blessings. It's like a pathway towards greater love and greater wisdom, which is ultimately the higher aim of what it is that we're here to do. It's the higher intention of the soul, the individual soul, but the collective soul as well. We're constantly moving in that direction as part of the mystery. When you have the North Node aspecting an important point in a chart, and in this case, the discovery chart of Chiron, it represents a leap forward. It represents progress in some way. It represents us finally saying, okay, we have to evolve here. And collectively and together, we take that leap forward together. But there's something else really interesting happening right around the same time. That is, as the North Node returns to the Chiron discovery point, Jupiter is going to be there as well. This is huge. This is massive, actually. Consider also that as we approach the lead up to this moment, right? What we're going to have happen here is in the middle of May, we've got a grand fixed cross taking place. So this is a larger configuration of tension, which can suggest frustration and motivation, but it involves really big power players. And it is in the middle of May that we are likely to have the most important moments of 2023 transpire at that time. Now, this is ultimately an energy that says, again, we got to change. We've got to evolve. We're entering a new age for the collective. What are we going to do with it? What is it going to mean? And while this is taking place, it involves, again, the North Node mighty close to where it was when Chiron was discovered. And it's going to involve Jupiter right there. It's going to involve Mars. It's going to involve Pluto in a brand new sign as well. So there's tremendous motivation here, along with a desire to say nothing is wrong, keep everything the same. We've got also this very clear need to do something, to advance, to move towards something that actually is going to work, because what is happening now really isn't working for anybody at all. And that is part of the energy that we're in now. I know it's challenging. I know that it hurts as we feel the build up towards that exact conjunction, but that's what happens as we become aware of what needs to be healed. And the more it is that we can stay focused on how can healing actually happen, the more likely it becomes that we don't have to have these events play out, because they're actual things that are happening in the world. We're becoming aware of things. It's not about cutting back on the awareness. The awareness is only going to expand as well. I mean, Pluto is about to go into Aquarius. I mean, our whole lives are going to start to become digital images that much more. There's going to be this sense of a revolutionary spirit, if you will, rooted in the digital that much more. And so we're already heading in that direction of getting more serious about implementing principles and policies of equality and what that looks like and what that feels like to us. And yes, this is part of the preparation, but in the process, a lot of wounding is happening on all sides, and that's not good as well. Now, I find it very synchronistic. I'm going to share a little bit of a personal or more relevant experience of someone that I know who's in my life. And I find it so synchronistic that I happen to be here now. So right now I'm recording this in Spain. I came to visit a very dear friend of many, many years. And my friend is in a partnership. His partner is amazing. I first met his partner back in 2015. And I remember when I first met his partner, I just felt like, oh my God, this person radiates love. They are so loving. They are so gentle. They are so engaging. And at first, like we spoke about, we had dinner, we talked together, and we were all talking about the things that my friend and I like to nerd out on, right? Which is, won't surprise you, philosophy, history, spirituality, psychology. Like these are the things that really wake me up and make me very excited and happy, which is why this is what I share that much more in my my videos as well, and have for so many years, right? But it was only like after a little while, and as we continued talking, and he was saying to me, wow, like Federico was telling me what you do, it's so interesting, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, what do you do? And so he was telling me that he has worked for many, many years within the National Police of Spain. And so he's been part of that here. Over the years that I've known him, I'll tell you, he is such an exceptional person. As soon as I met him, I felt that. The love was exceptional. The intelligence was exceptional. The empathy and sensitivity, before I even knew what it was that he did, professionally speaking. But of course, the fact that I'm here is not really an accident, because with everything that's happened as I'm recording this, it's been some 24 hours since we learned about the video. It was released to the public, having to do with what Kyrie Nichols suffered in the last moments of his life. Very horrific, right? No one who watches that can't be very moved by that in some way. And so as part of his job, my friend's partner had to watch the video and gave me some insights, some opinions, some thoughts, and allowed me to share some of that with you. This is somebody who has been for a long time with the National Police of Spain. He headed the Human Rights Department within the National Police for years, was very much at the forefront of that, of creating a more inclusive and harmonious relationship between the diverse communities that they served and the police department as well. So that was part of his work that he's really passionate about, but he's done work in so many different areas. And as part of what he does now, especially considering how high ranking he is, he has actually visited police departments around the world, including being in Spain extensively, all over, visiting local departments. And he did mention that local departments may act differently than the actual national police, who decided to do things differently with their own agency. But he's also, of course, been all over the world, including many parts of the United States as well. And this was all done with the intention of, and as part of his work, so that the police here could figure out what works and what doesn't work, and how to magnify what does work within policing here in Spain, and to eliminate or negate as much as possible what doesn't work around the world as well. And so again, he did say that local community or local municipality policing can be rather different, but at least on a national level, what happened a few years ago was they decided to reimagine policing. They figured that what they were doing wasn't working. And so they set out to figure out what is going to work. And they realized a few different things. One was that police were not viewed with a lot of respect. They were very aware that they weren't very respected because of the pay and the requirements of the work. It was attracting certain types of people that maybe could be better vetted in some way. And that they needed to change the perception of the police all around, not only in terms of how the public saw them, but also how they saw themselves and how they practiced policing also. And so he was saying that one of the first things that the police department did was they changed the requirements to even qualify for becoming a police officer. So one of the things was you had to have a degree in anything. Now, keep in mind, though, in Spain, you don't have to take out a mortgage to get a degree. It's just part of public education. And so it isn't that necessarily you have to do the things that happen in other parts of the world, where it's only if you have the resources and the money, and only if you were born into certain neighborhoods where they had the resources for good public education, that you even have a chance to go into higher education at that, right? So much of that is based on opportunity in many parts of the world. However, at least here, because there's a more all-encompassing public education, more people have that much more of a chance to learn and prepare and grow, and also have access to all levels of education, including higher education as well. And so everybody had to be overqualified. The income was jacked up as well. So along with being overqualified, you got the opportunity to make a lot of money. And so what you had was people with engineering degrees being able to make much more money than they would as engineers if they became police officers. So that was one thing. The other thing was that there was extensive psychological evaluations. There was also an expansion and extensive training, and much of that training involved de-escalation tactics. It involved negotiation tactics as well. It was all about changing the way in which the police officers interact with people in the community as well. And it was about helping people and the police see that the role of the police is to help. Like, that's it. And as part of that, they got a lot of training oriented in that direction as well. A lot of things that social workers learn in other parts of the world, the police officers had to learn as well, because that's how it is that they were encouraged to see themselves, and they wanted the public to see them as well. And so these were some of the things that were implemented. Now, again, my friend's partner was saying that he's had a chance to go to all different countries and look at how policing is done, and to write up reports on that. And he has actually gone to many different departments in the US at many different levels, and been able to ride along, been able to actually see not just the philosophy behind a department, the culture within a different department, but also to see what's actually happening on the ground floor. And so one of the things he realized as part of his assessment and observations was that there was this inner culture, an understanding, a feeling, if you will, as people were practicing policing. They would go out into the world with this absolute belief that the next person that they meet could kill them, that because they're wearing a uniform, people want to kill them. And so they have to protect themselves first and foremost. They have to make sure that they get through the day alive every single day. Every single day they have to do that. And these are people who don't have a whole lot of training in how to deal with that, how to acknowledge that, or how to work through that. They don't normally have a lot of formal education. And for many of these people, given their educational background, the money that they make is probably one of the best options they have to make money available to them. And it really isn't that much money anyways. The starting salary isn't really as much as compared to what other police departments in other countries might pay. And so for that somewhat limited, not so much money, you have to confront death every single day in many different moments. That stance, that belief changes the way you see the people around you. It changes how you interact with people at a traffic stop. It changes the mechanisms with which your psyche is able to even live through a day like that. But it also is the type of work that is going to attract a certain type of person as well that really is not best suited to be a police officer. And so I remember a dear friend of mine who practiced medicine for a long time, a brilliant doctor. And I remember once she said to me that the type of people who would be the best physicians very often are the exact people who burn out the most quickly. They are the people who end up feeling like completely spent, like they've done everything that they can. They are overcome with the powerlessness that you can feel as a doctor, with a desire to heal, but knowing that there's only so much you can do and so much more. The external pressure, the administrative pressure, but also, yes, dealing with people with the sensitivity that they need at moments when they're most vulnerable. Well, how do you do that day in and day out? It only goes so far, and people who are really good at that job, they really don't last that long. And so who are the people that do this the best, that have this skill? Well, they are people who very often had to learn this as very small children. If they were going to navigate an environment that, if they allowed themselves to feel it, if they allowed sensitivity, the pain of that would be too much. And so whether it was that they felt powerless in their immediate environment or they felt that there was pain, they had to learn to take that more sensitive part of ourselves that makes human experience so rich and so meaningful and lock it away. They had to learn to detach in a way that was stark, in a way that was cold. This is a defense strategy of the psyche to be able to manage and live through traumatic environments and traumatic experiences. You have to be somebody who is good at that. And the only way you get good at that is through practice. But you have to be someone who's good at that in order to be able to do that day in and day out, especially as an adult. Because if you allowed yourself to look at what was actually happening around you, what you were feeling as you looked at your fellow human beings, it would be very hard to live with yourself. And so again, the defense mechanism of the psyche is to make others not really human, not one of you. And it is also someone who is only able to really tap into that more sensitive part of the self, that is able to do the work to transcend that early trauma instead of repeating it, instead of continuing the cycle. It is only through the inner work that you're able to transcend the cycle. And I have seen this again and again. I have seen shades of this again and again. And so I was talking to my friend's partner about these events. I said, I could only see a few stills. I couldn't bring myself to watch. And he said, don't watch it. He was saying that as part of his job, he had to watch it and analyze it. But even for him, who has seen so many videos like this from the world over, he's seen videos like this. This stood out in how much it affected him and how he felt looking at it. And so he was like, yeah, don't do that. But then, I asked him, like, what do you think could be the solution around this? And we had this extensive discussion. One of the first things he said was the fear of feeling like anybody you meet could have a gun and could kill you. That can only be solved through gun control. And everybody at the table was like, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. Now, they're not astrologers, right? But that's the general feeling of people that isn't even on the table in that part of the world. And so we talked about it. I was incredibly moved, incredibly impressed by how much the conversation that was happening involved what's happening in the sky right now. What's happening as Jupiter moves towards Chiron. Slowly but surely, we are becoming aware of the wounds. And it's one of those things that, with what is transpiring right now, simple changes in policy, in how, things are being recorded, we're seeing that none of that really matters. Right? None of that is effective, rather. What is effective is a holistic approach, and it is the only thing that is effective. The only thing that is effective is being aware of the wounding that is being not only perpetrated, but that has been experienced by the wounder as well. And the only solution is to change the ways in which police see themselves and the ways in which police see their role as well in the larger community also. Now, another two things I want to add before I move on from talking about my friend's partner is I asked for permission to talk about his life, and it was under the condition my friend made me promise that I would let you all know that his friend is extremely gorgeous and looks extremely young. So that was the promise. I have fulfilled that promise. Okay, putting my promise to the side now. I want to also mention, as I look at the energy that is transpiring right now for us, remember that wounding isn't just around what it is that we are viewing, what it is that we see is happening to people, to civilians, as we might say, but it's our own understandings of the wounds that we carry. How much is it that we care about the healing of others or not? Because we're getting to a place where we have to. We just have to. It's like the universe is making it really, really obvious that you got to deal with this already. That's Jupiter in Aries moving towards Chiron in Aries as well. I do think, though, that the real breakthroughs are going to happen after we get not only past that conjunction, which I think is going to be a big moment, and there's going to be rising awareness until we get there. And I'm sorry to say, I hope that there aren't more events like this, but it's very likely that events like this have already happened, but the awareness around them, it has yet to occur and will occur between now and the middle of March. But it is the tension around what needs to change that likely is going to grow and reach a precipice, if you will, once we get to the middle of May. Now, beyond that, and on the other side of that, that is when meaningful healing starts to happen. I think once the North Node gets to the point of Chiron's discovery, that is going to be when we as a collective start to understand, okay, Chiron is a thing. This is an energy. We've got to figure out how to integrate this. We've got to change whatever it is that needs to change, whatever it is that's causing wounding from the inside out. But that is especially true for the context of where Chiron is now, in the sign that has to do with our soldiers, our warriors, our law enforcement. And also, our athletes as well are covered by Aries. Our children are covered by Aries as well. Early childhood is covered by Aries as well. Because so much of what happens in early childhood ultimately creates those mechanisms of the psyche that set you up for the rest of your life. So much of what you come to understand about yourself and how you're going to survive, the survival instinct is very much associated with the sign of Aries as well. How you are going to survive. That understanding may need to change. We may need to bring conscious healing to that so that we can not only navigate through this time, but ultimately end up better. Now, as part of the even bigger picture, I do want to say that once we step more firmly into the middle of this decade, right? So it's going to be in 2025 that we're going to start to feel Neptune moving in and out of the sign of Aries. And this is going to be a huge shift. As much as Chiron in Aries is encouraging a more holistic approach, Neptune brings with it a spiritual understanding, if you will. It spiritualizes the will itself, the individual itself. But it also creates some ambiguity also. So we are going to have to watch how it is that that energy ends up being implemented, because it can be realized in so many different ways. My hope is that we choose to realize it in a way of bringing genuine healing. And again, Neptune being the imagination, reimagining with a focus on the imagination, what policing can actually be. I'm going to leave you with this thought as well. I was remembering a movie. I could have swore I saw a movie. I don't remember which one it was. If you know, please let people know below. Let me know so that I can be sure to watch it. But in this movie, it was like sort of futuristic, and it was a comedy as well. And what happens is someone has an accident. Now, it could have been Back to the Future Part 2, but maybe it isn't. So I just want to put it out there. Was that type of flavor of a movie. So basically, dude has an accident, okay? And just as he has an accident, he steps out of the car. From the air, a flying robot comes in front of him and says, you have an accident. You had an accident. Here's the scan. it determined that you don't have any injuries. This is the problem with your car. Do you agree with this assessment? And you could say yes or no. And if you agree with the assessment, then the robot prints out a receipt and you get that. And right around the corner comes a tow truck to take your car. And the robot tells you in 96.5 hours, your vehicle will be ready for pickup at this location. And all of that is documented. If you say no, well, then right away, the machine prints out a receipt and says, your date of arbitration or your court date is going to be this. And the tow truck comes by and it says, your car will be ready at such and such a moment, such and such a date. Okay. That I know is really getting futuristic with policing, but that is possible. Like it really is. I know I'm being very Aquarian here, but look, Pluto is about to step into Aquarius. And I do think that we as a collective around the world are about to get a lot more scientific about how we approach complex social issues. And a lot of it is going to come down to what the numbers show, what works, what are the probabilities. So when I met my partner's friend, he was actually doing a PhD. And as part of his PhD research, he was at UCLA for, I think it was 6 months or something. And his PhD was officially in statistics, but it related to police work. And so that, on the one hand, self-improvement was something that whom he was working for, the national government of Spain, felt like he was worth the investment to do that. But also, it was quite fascinating how accumulating statistics became part of figuring out what works, like what actually is effective policing, what gets them the outcomes towards a more peaceful society, what helps them in that regard. And so, yes, I do think with Pluto in Aquarius, there is a move towards almost like a hyper scientism, hyper proving what can be empirically shown and everything else kind of put, to the side. There are great things about that, and there are not great things about that as well. And so societies that tend to bring with them a more Aquarian perspective tend to focus a lot more on equality, on ideas, on education as the great equalizer. They invest in education. They make sure it's accessible to as many people as possible as well. However, societies where you see strong Aquarian signatures tend to not be very friendly to astrology, for example, right? Because astrology is an act of poetry, but it taps into some of the roots of religion, but there are also roots that have been vilified, and instead religions thought it needed to go a different way, and it challenges free will and all of that. And so it'll be interesting to see how it is that we tap into the power of this upcoming 20-year transit of Pluto in Aquarius. We're going to feel that energy for 20 years. That is going to profoundly change the world before this decade is even out. And as part of that, I do think what's happening in the middle of May is something we absolutely are going to need to pay attention to, because it's what's happening there that is going to show us and bring to us a profound collective will to change things for good and for the better and for the collective. To move towards meaningful healing that changes things from the inside out is a part of our collective move and collective desire at this time, navigating forward from here. Now, normally this is when I say what I love about this transit, but I'm going to leave that alone for now just because it is a sensitive time. It's an emotional time. It's challenging, I know, to a lot of us out there. And so I am sending massive amounts of love, massive amounts of peace and hope that we move through this time in humanity with as much grace and peace and patience with each other as possible. And that really all beings are well for another day. Thank you for watching. I'm truly so grateful for it. And until we connect again, take care. Bye. Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there.